Stocks closed mixed on Wall Street on Friday. The Dow corrects for the 7th straight session, while the S&P 500 dips for the 4th session out of the last 5 ahead of the Federal Reserve's policy decision later this week. Stocks in Asia-Pacific trade mixed as investors look ahead to policy decisions from the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan and China through the week. The GIFT Nifty is also suggesting a lower start for the Indian market. Brent crude prices rise to hit a 3-week high above $74 a barrel on expectations of additional sanctions on Russia and Iran. Gold prices come off 5-week highs as the dollar strengthens. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the agenda of the GST meeting on the 21st of December will include proposal on easing of doing a business in online service sector. A 3-month extension is likely to be given to the group of ministers on the compensation cess. Tabla maestro Zakir Hussain passed away in the early hours of a Monday at the age of 73. The Padma Vibhushan awardee succumbed to respiratory complications after being hospitalized for 2 weeks for heart and lung ailments. Hello, good morning. You've tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18 and I'm Vinny Motiwala in the Mumbai News Center. Thank you so much for tuning in. But let's look at the market and what the Asian market actually is doing this morning. Seems like a mixed opening that we're watching out for in terms of the Asian market. Like you can see, right, Taiwan index that's holding on to gains of 0.6%. But on the flip side, we've seen Hang Seng that is a bit subdued in trade. Other than Hang Seng, we're seeing Nikkei that's down. We're seeing ASX 200 that's also trading in the red. So only Taiwan index as of now is holding on to some gains. Hang Seng also is seeing a bit more pressure coming in. Shanghai quite muted in terms of trade, but Nifty implied open that's also not indicating any different start from the Asian markets because Nifty implied open as of now is down 60 points. So yes, expecting a bit of a red to a muted start for the Indian markets as well. Keep an eye out on that. US markets didn't do anything exciting as well on Friday. So that's what we'll move on and talk about as well, because Wall Street, that ended flat across major indices, with Dow continuing its dip for the 7th straight session. This is marking its longest losing streak since 2020, and S&P 500 ended unchanged, while Nasdaq, that rose 24 points overall last week on Friday that we saw. Now, in the week ending 13th of December, the key indices are coming off their sluggish week. The Dow losing close to almost 2%, S&P 500 falling around 0.64%, while Nasdaq also eking out some bit of a gain that we saw. 0.3% of gain is what we could see. Let's go across to CNBC's Kate Rooney, who's joining in with us to give us a wrap on what happened on Wall Street on Friday.
U.S. markets were basically flat across the major indexes in Friday trading, with the Dow falling for 7 days in a row, its longest losing streak since 2020. The Dow down 86 points, the S&P 500 lost a fraction of a point, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq up 24 points. In his first public comments since United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in New York City last week, his boss, United Health Group CEO Andrew Whitty, mourned the death of his colleague in a New York Times op-ed Friday and wrote that the U.S. healthcare system is, quote, flawed and needs reform. He acknowledged that the reasons behind health insurance coverage decisions aren't well understood and that the company, quote, shares some of the responsibility for that. And consulting giant McKinsey has agreed to pay $650 million for its work advising Purdue Pharma on how to increase sales of its addictive opioid drug OxyContin in a deferred prosecution agreement that will resolve a federal criminal probe into the company's consulting. The court filing says the consulting giant knowingly and intentionally conspired with Purdue Pharma and others to aid and abet the misbranding of prescription drugs. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thanks so much for that update. But the former Dallas as well as Cleveland Fed President Robert Kaplan as well as Loretta Mester hinted at a slower move to be taken by the Fed in the upcoming meetings. Listen in to what more they had to say.
If inflation is sticky, which I think it is, around the mid-twos, the Fed can probably get the Fed funds rate to 4.25, 4.5. That would mean one more move this next week. But inflation, I think, looks a little stuck here. There's some things better, like on services. There's some things worse, like on food and vehicles. And so I don't think this is a no-brainer at all. I think we need to see demonstrable improvement in inflation from here to cut below 4.25, 4.5. And so my SEP would probably be in the neighborhood of 2.
Inflation has proven to be a little more sticky than they anticipated. There hasn't been much progress over the past 4 months. And also the economy on the real side, growth is above trend, and that's a bit stronger than they anticipated. And the employment part, which is an important part of the mandate, of the dual mandate, that's also proven to be stronger than they feared in September when they made that first 50 basis point cut. So I think, given where the economy has proven over the past, several months and likely will go over the next few months going forward, I think a pause is in order.
Okay, that's all the global market action that we have for you all this morning. But how is all that going to be impacting the Indian markets? We have a team of research who's here to set you up for trade this morning. What are we watching out for in terms of events, market trade setup, as well as the stocks to watch out for? So good morning, Hormaz, as well as Sudarshan. Thank you so much for joining in with us. But Hormaz, let me come to you first. What are the market cues that we need to watch out for today? How are we expecting the day to pan out? Good morning.
Good morning, Winnie, and we're expecting a bit of a cautious start for the week. It's a big week because almost 22 central banks come out with interest rate decisions. I'll get to that in just a bit. But, Friday's session, well, the screen shows it is green, but it was anything but smooth sailing for the markets that day. Almost a 350-point drop on the Nifty at one point, and then we saw a very, very sharp recovery that caught the bears on the wrong side, that the bulls were on the wrong side in the morning as well. Almost a 600-point recovery intraday on the Nifty, a 1,300-point recovery intraday from the lows for the Nifty Bank. So it was an extremely choppy session, although the index, the Nifty, closed at the higher end of that 24,500 to 24,800 range by the close of the session. And it was the index heavyweights, right, that were contributing to this recovery. Almost everybody, Reliance, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, ITC, HUL, all of them recovered anywhere between 2.5% to 4% from the lows of the day, and that contributed to the recovery in the index. Even though for the week, that ensured that the Nifty closed in the green, but the Nifty Bank, despite that 1,300-point recovery from the lows, ended in the red for the week gone by. But for today's session, of course, last week's high now of 24,857 comes into play, followed by, of course, 25,000 on the upside. Now the low of the last Monday, which was 24,580, that becomes an important support for the index. For the Nifty Bank, of course, sustaining above 53,500, where it has closed above on Friday, sustaining above those levels will be key. And analysts believe that if it moves above 54,000 on a sustained level, then it can lead to newer record highs. Now, of course, all eyes are on the Fed rate decision. A 25 basis point cut is priced in, but what next for the Fed? That will be something that the street would be keenly awaiting. Of course, it is the weekly expiry and the extreme swings that come along with it. That, of course, will need to be kept in mind as well. But a street, it's a week that belongs to the central banks. Some important rate decisions coming in. But for now, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly cautious start for our own markets.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Hormaz. Surely an important week coming in for the Indian markets as well as the global markets. Let's move on and talk about the important stocks to watch out for in trade today. We have Dixon Technologies. Now, they formed a JV with Vivo to manufacture smartphones in India. We could see some bit of an up move there. Reliance Industries has acquired 74% stake in Navi Mumbai's IIA for around 1,628 crores. We also have Hero MotoCorp that will be in focus after they partnered with Hockey India League as a title sponsor, so watch out for that one. Aeroflex Industries board has approved raising around 400 crores. This is going to be via QIP. We could see some bit of an action here. Godrej Agrovet, that's the next one to focus on. Gujarat government has allocated land in Vadodara, Surat and Tapi to the company, and this is going to be for palm oil cultivation and oil palm cultivation expansion under the National Mission on the edible oils as well as oil palm. Afcons Infra, they have received a letter of award for a project of around 1,000 crore rupees, and this is from the MP Metro Rail Corporation. So some bit of a move here. 36 I beg your pardon, 63 moons. That's the one to focus on as well. Board has approved a one-time settlement, and this is for 1,950 crore rupees, as proposed by the NSEL Investors Forum. So keep an eye on that. Biocon's European Medicine Agency, CHMP, has recommended approval for Biocon Biologics, one of the biosimilar drugs that had received an approval from the US FDA even a short while ago. So keep an eye on Biocon. PVR Inox, they've opened 6 screens multiplexes in Dehradun, Uttarakhand. So that could see some focus, as well as Max Financials. They have there's a change of name, which is approved by the Registrar of Companies of Max Life to Access Max Life Insurance. So keeping an eye on all these stocks this morning. Let's move on, and it's finally time that Sudarshan takes us to important cues that we're watching out for in the world of F&O. Good morning, Sudarshan.
Morning, Vinny. So most of the data on the F&O front is looking healthy, but talking first about the Friday session, after a downtick start in the first hour, we saw like all the front-end indices like somewhere trading with cuts of almost 1 to 2%. But what a recovery we saw after 10:30 a.m. Most of the indices at the close basically closed at day's high, recovering somewhere around 2 to 3% each from day's low. But for today, GIFT Nifty is indicating a start with minor cuts. Talking about the flows in the cash market on Friday, we saw FIs buying shares of more than rupees 2,300 crore, while DIs have sold more than 700 crore. On the futures front, in the derivatives, also FIs have bought almost rupees 500 crore. At the same time, they have added long contracts. Addition was of more than 4,500 contracts and reduced short exposure by 3,000 contracts. And with this long exposure on the FI front now stands at 41%, and on the client front, it stands at 60%. On the options front, on the call side, 2 options that were active. That was first, 24,800 call has seen addition of almost 20 lakh shares, and 25,000 call has seen addition of 19.5 lakh shares. On the put side, 24,700 put has seen addition of almost 26 lakh shares. And with this, support for Nifty is now seen somewhere around 24,640, and resistance has now moved higher to 24,850. In the stocks in focus, 2 stocks have entered into F&O band, and those are Manappuram Finance and SAIL, and already 5 more stocks are in the band. So overall, 7 stocks are in F&O band for today.
Okay, 7 stocks in F&O band for today, so surely keeping an eye on that. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We get you an exclusive piece on the whole host of discussions that are likely to be the part of the upcoming GST meet. So stay tuned for that after the break. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. And now let's move on and get you an exclusive. A whole host of deliberations and discussions are taking place with the GST Council. My colleague Timsi Jaipuria is joining in with us on the phone line to fill us in with what are the sources telling her. Timsi, good morning. Timsi? Okay, so we'll connect back with Timsi on that front. But let's move on and just get in a quick update coming in on OpenAI front. Now, what isn't coming in important other news that Suchir Balaji, a former researcher at OpenAI and a whistleblower, was found dead in his apartment in San Francisco. The 26-year-old had worked for the company for 4 years, and during his term, he had flagged serious concerns over OpenAI's use of illegal copyrighted material. He alleged that the material was used to train the company's generative AI models, that is ChatGPT. Suchir's whistleblowing comes during the time when there are a wave of lawsuits filed against OpenAI. Co-founder Elon Musk, who later parted ways with the company, also reacted to the death in a cryptic post on X. Okay, let's connect back with Timsi on those exclusives and what we're expecting from the GST Council meet. What are they going to be talking about? Timsi, good morning.
Yes, morning. As you rightly mentioned, there are a slew of agenda items on the GST Council's table, which is likely to meet on 21st of December. Firstly, they are going to close the GOM on revenue analysis because that GOM has not been able to provide any great recommendations, and thus this GOM is likely to be closed, which was formed way back in 2019. Next up is the GOM on compensation cess. That is going to seek an extension of 3 months, and most likely it will be granted by the GST Council. Also on the agenda, a lot of proposals for giving more teeth to the GST network, that is the IT backbone of GST Council and the GST system. Firstly, for the taxpayers to provide a concept note as to whether there should be GSTN registration, separate categories provided to the taxpayers based on their risk profile, so that limited ITC can be accessed by these risk-profiled GSTN taxpayers. Also, apart from that, there could be various other proposals such as providing temporary GSTN to those where proper or permanent GST registration has not been provided, based on, again, whether they are liable to get this registration or not, so that they can conduct the business. Apart from that, another important area for industry and taxpayers and for the government, that the rules and procedures of GST appellate tribunals are likely to get cleared, post which tribunal can actually start functioning smoothly. So all of this packed in a GST Council meeting that is likely to meet on coming Saturday on 21st of December.
Okay, Timsy, thank you so much for the update there. We'll keep an eye out on more such updates. Thanks for joining in. On that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere, because after the break, we'll talk about what's happening in the world of commodities. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for staying tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. But in a somber news coming in this morning, tabla maestro Ustad Zakir Hussain passed away at the hospital in San Francisco at the age of 73. According to his family, he died due to complications arising due to progressive illness of the respiratory system. Reportedly, the 73-year-old musician who took the tabla to the global stage had been hospitalized for the last 2 weeks and was later taken to the ICU as his condition worsened. Ustad Zakir Hussain's career spanned over 5 decades, during which he was revered as both a national treasure in India and admired worldwide. The percussionist and one of India's most celebrated classical musicians received the Padma Shri in 1988, the Padma Bhushan in 2002 and Padma Vibhushan in 2023. Okay. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, Bazaar Morning Call.